Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Venerable sirs, esteemed speakers, delegates, and dear friends in the Dhamma. At the very outset, I avail myself of this unique opportunity to extend my warmest, best wishes and greetings to all of you on the occasion of the 5th Psychodata International Conference for Buddhist Women being held in Phnom Penh, Cambodia from December 29, 1997 to January 4, 1998. I would like to express my deep sense of gratitude and thanks to Dr. Norma Fright, Conference Coordinator, and Venerable Karma Lexia Thomso, Secretary General, for kindly inviting me to participate in this memorable conference and present a paper. I have been listening to various contents of the paper submitted by our different esteemed participants here, but I am just presenting a paper a bit different from the contents of the papers already presented. The theme of my paper is the Buddhist contributions to interreligious dialogue. Each major world religion possesses a worldview which is peculiar to itself. In conformity with the specific worldview, which each religion possesses a spiritual goal to, is set out for the respective adherent to pursue, despite the fact that there are striking similarities and a great deal of common ground in the religions, norms prescribed and the moral virtues recognized in the major religions. There are also notable differences at a theoretical and metaphysical level. These differences have sometimes been a divisive factor in human social relations. Instances are not rare in human history when religion had been the source of social conflicts and misery, rather than being the source of goodwill and harmony. Dogmatic adherence to religious views sometimes generates precisely these evils that the founders of religions so enthusiastically exhorted their followers to eliminate. In more recent times, a tendency which began as an interreligious dialogue has signs of expanding into an interreligious dialogue. The interreligious dialogue developed almost simultaneously but independently among the different denominations of Christians and among the various schools and sects of Buddhism. In Buddhism, the interreligious dialogue has been directed to the identification what is basic and common in the teachings of Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana or Tantrayana schools and sects. Such world forums like the World Fellowship of Buddhists, the World Fellowship of Buddhist Youth, the Buddhist Circle, the Asian Buddhist Conference for Peace, Psychodata International Association of Buddhist Women, and the International Sangha Council, etc., besides joint celebration of Vesak and increasing participation in joint conferences, are proof of an ever-increasing dialogue among the Buddhists. It is significant that interreligious dialogue is a phenomenon of the West and particularly of Europe. Europe has become exemplary, receptive to all religions, and Buddhism has been a noteworthy beneficiary. Interreligious dialogue should not be directed to the achievement of verbal agreement compromise among the participating religions. Some of the proponents of dialogue assert that for the sake of effective dialogue, a Buddhist should not be too Buddhist, or a Hindu too Hindu, or a Christian too Christian, or a Sikh to Sikh, or a Muslim to Muslim, and so on. Interreligious dialogue should aim at releasing tensions caused by prejudice and bigotry, which are themselves caused by mutual ignorance of the contending parties. Now, I am speaking about the Buddhist attitude towards other religions. The Buddhist attitude to other religions has from its very inception been one of critical tolerance. This is an excellent summary of the position advocated by the Buddha himself. Buddhism has effectively combined its missionary zeal with tolerance, and the spirit of Buddhism beyond the confines of the land in which was born cannot be attributed in any way to military might or imperial power, but solely to the intrinsic appeal of the decorum, the universality of the Dhamma. It is pertinent to mention some intrinsic features of the Buddhist doctrine which promote an attitude of tolerance towards other faiths. Buddhism advocates a critical and non-dogmatic attitude towards all views, including the teachings of the Buddha himself. The ultimate goal of Buddhism can be attained only by understanding of reality through each one's own effort, pekkatam goiti dapo. Deliverance comes not through faith or the strength of one's subjective conviction, anatra saddhaya, but through wisdom and understanding of the nature of the things, panna. The Kalama Sutra represents the Buddhist approach to truth. Dogmatic acceptance or prejudiced rejection removes us further and further away from the truth. The Buddha did not expect his teaching to be taken as a dogmatic ideology. Instead, it was to be used merely as a means to an end. The Buddha criticizes fatalistic doctrines, wherever they be theistic or non-theistic, because they are harmful to any spiritual endeavor. He also offered constructive criticism of other beliefs and attempted to redirect the attitudes of those who professed them not by hastily rejecting them, but by attempting to gradually transform them from acquiring new moral and spiritual significance. This the Buddha did with the Vedic concept of the sacrifice, the conception of suspicious signs, and many other religious concepts of his time. Buddhism presents no threat to any religion, sect, or denomination. Religions have existed in their diversity because they differ in their approaches and because each approach provides the kind of spiritual solace and guidance which a particular individual or a group requires. Thus, these differences are need-based and serve a vital purpose in society. Besides the diversity in the expression and practice of spirituality, is it itself a rich heritage of humanity. In conclusion, I would like to say the foremost Buddhist contribution to interreligious dialogue should be the readiness to participate in any effort which eradicates bigotry born out of prejudice and ignorance and all of fundamentalism arising from misplaced religious fervor. Their participation should be the promotion of tolerance and mutual respect. But such tolerance and respect should not be founded on shallow slogans like, after all, every religion is the same, or one religion is as good as the other. On the contrary, respect must be generated on full understanding of the distinctive characteristics of each religion. Similarly, tolerance must emanate from the conviction that spiritual needs of humanity are diverse, and so what caters for them should be equally diverse. Secondly, another significant contribution would be to promote interdepth discussions of vital differences. Interreligious dialogue is not an effort to make concessions or equations. Lastly, the Buddhist contribution should be in the form of understanding the ethical importance of religion in the present-day context of materialistic preoccupation, which generates violence and threats to peace, ruthless exploitation of the weak and the helpless, and deteriorating interpersonal relations. Buddhism has a remarkable ethical base. Its strength comes from the fact that it is expected to emanate from one's own conviction that a particular behavior is desirable because it is for the good of the many and happiness of the many. The Buddhists should not only encourage but also support with all the moral strength, material resources at their command, interreligious dialogue as a preparation and as a base for a universal spiritual awakening founded on lofty ethical values, contributing to the improvement of relation of individual with individual, nation with nation, and within humanity as a whole. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. First, my profound thanks to everyone for all of their help and welcoming to me as someone in this group who is not a Buddhist and who, of all the world's religions, probably knows the least about Buddhism of all the work that I do. I have learned so much already while I'm here and expect to learn a great deal more in the next few days. And for me, what I've heard here really reinforces the importance of women working, women who work from a religious or a spiritual base, coming to work together across the lines of their faith, across the lines of their spirituality, that in each of our faith groups, we are dealing with many of the same issues and the same problems, and from the same values and from the same desires. That's not to ignore differences, because differences are as important as similarities, but indeed there is so much we can learn from each other's experience and history. In the program, it says that I would talk about building interfaith networks. And I think rather than calling it building of interfaith networks, I think really what we're talking about is building coalitions or net opportunity to offer our gifts, our talents, our skills, and our service within our faith groups as well as to society as a whole. And for many women, and certainly I've heard much of this here, for many women, whether they are Jewish or Christian or Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist or one of the many other faiths, the experience, the historical experience as well as the present experience within religions is that our gifts and our talents and our service is not fully welcomed. And it is to some extent out of that lack of full welcome and full inclusion that we come together, either as Sakadita or as women church, which is a term we use in Roman Catholicism, or in many, many other configurations, that there is an experience of exclusion as well as a positive experience within faith that brings us together as women. There is an experience of going to conference after conference and seeing panel after panel with nothing but men. There is an experience of opening books and seeing nothing written but things by men, and a desire to share together our experience as women. So this is, I think, what brings us together. What I want to talk about is a little bit about some of the benefits that we can get from working across faith lines, across our religious and spiritual beliefs. First, the sharing of ideas and the recognizing of our differences as well really contributes to a richer understanding of our own experience in the context of other people's experiences. We can get new ideas for how to approach problems, obstacles that we are having from perhaps things that other women have done in their faith group. For example, and some of these, and there's also some work and some don't work. Some things translate and come over and some don't. In the Episcopal Church, for example, Christian women who were not being ordained found that the way for them to get ordained was to find someone to defy authority and to illegally ordain the first dozen women. This then created a conflict within the faith group that the men needed to deal with, because now there were women whom, whether they liked it or not, were priests. What then do they do? This then led to a reconsideration of this and to the opening of the priesthood to more women. This may not be an appropriate path in Buddhism, but at least knowing and understanding each other's experiences helps us. The other thing that we can do when we come together across the lines of our religion is learn skills. Each of us has different gifts, different skills, different experiences. There was a panel on the first day on media. Those of us who are more interested in or have more reason to bring our things out into the public arena may gain skills in how to deal with media. A project that we currently have is working with women academics in the Christian and Jewish faith and teaching them the skills to write in a non-academic manner for women who are not scholars and for publication in ordinary newspapers. These are kinds of skills that many of us could use. The other thing we can really do when we come together is help each other. For those who are working for the rights of women and for the full inclusion of women within our faith group, it is often a lonely task. And in that loneliness, the ability to come together and to share our suffering and to share our rejection and to share our difficulties and to share the feelings, the anger, the sense of exclusion, as well as the positive, has value for us. Another thing that we can do is to help each other, coming together across faith lines. We have different gifts, different skills, different opportunities. We meet each other. We can do things like say, oh, there's a conference next year in such and such a place. There's no Buddhist on the panel. There's no Jewish person on the panel. And in each of these ways, we can help bring each other into greater inclusion in the larger community of religion. So those are some of the things. And we can raise each other's consciousness. We hear about issues that we never heard about before. problems that are not ours, challenges that are not ours, successes that are not ours. And this helps us to become, I think, wiser in understanding our own situation. The other thing I wanted to mention were some of the issues that I see women in different faith groups dealing with, whether it is Buddhist, Jewish, Christian, etc. And so much of it I've heard here, which has been so interesting. The basic question of the nature of women. In each of the religions, there are teachings, there are stories, there is philosophy, there are beliefs about who women are and what women's place in the world is. And most of those have been derived from a male consciousness. It is men talking about who they think women are. And women are now coming together in different faith groups to define for themselves, who are we as women? What is our nature? What is the role that our capacity to reproduce plays in terms of who we are? And how do we see our role within the world? This is a common enterprise, I find, of women across religious lines. The other thing that I think is much has been talked about here and is probably one of the major preoccupations across faith lines is the question of ordination. This is a question in Judaism in terms of rabbis, who can be a rabbi, who cannot be a rabbi. In Christianity, who can be a priest, who cannot be a priest. In Islam, what is the role of women as teacher? Are there women muftis? Are there going to be women imams? What role in terms of the various equivalents of ordination will women play? And you hear so many different things. For example, Protestant women who have been fully ordained to the priesthood, Jewish women who have been fully accepted as rabbis, at least technically, are reporting from 15 and 20 years of experience of full ordination that this has not made a major difference in how they are treated, in what kind of gifts they are allowed to offer to the community. Jewish women report that even though they are now rabbis, they do not get to be the head rabbi of a major Jewish temple. They are still the director of education of the temple. They are still the chaplain in the hospital, but they are not the rabbi in charge, that they are still in ways excluded. Protestant women say very much the same thing. And you even have within the Anglican and the English and the Episcopal Church, you have conservatives who have been so angered by the ordination of women that they have left. They have taken the whole parish, the whole congregation, and said, we don't want to be Episcopalians anymore. My church, the Roman Catholic Church, which still does not ordain women, accepts Episcopal married priests. When we don't let our own male priests marry, we will take an Episcopalian who is married, who is a priest, into the Roman Catholic Church as a priest if the reason he wants to come in is because he is angry that Anglican women have been ordained to the priesthood. So we see how our faiths coalesce with each other to create difficulties. Within the Catholic community and within other communities, there is also around ordination a very big debate over whether we want to be ordained or whether we want to change the priesthood. Is the priesthood itself worth saving? Or are there problems inherent if we see our religious identity as based on the equality of all persons in the faith? Is a permanent, celibate, separated, elite priesthood in the service of all the people? Most of us don't have answers to all of these questions. This is the dynamic of the dialogue and the conversation that is going on within the community of women around this question. do women who become priests in traditionally male settings or constructions become more like the men and adopt that which is difficult, or do they actually have the opportunity and the ability to transform the priesthood? Another question that women are dealing with across faith lines, and women especially deal with this, is the question of the relationship between lay people and the priesthood, lay clergy, and particularly among women. For example, in most traditions, women who are nuns, and I've heard much of this, this has been very interesting to me to hear this in this context, have felt for some time and been for some time discriminated against, have not been recognized, acknowledged, supported, and respected to the extent that is just, that is fair. And so there is a desire on the part of those women to be respected and acknowledged and to be equal to those men who have been fully ordained, to have the same outward symbols of respect granted to them as are granted to the men. At the same time, those women are in solidarity with lay women, lay people. And so the challenge is, how do you have a system in which, as we are in transformation and as we are moving towards greater equality, how can you balance these two legitimate sentiments and values, the desire to be treated as an equal with others who are ordained, and the desire at the same time to be equal to lay women? How do we deal again in this dichotomy, this challenge, this dualism between lay and ordained, between clergy and non-clergy? How do we deal with these differences? For example, in Roman Catholicism, lay people are becoming much more influential within the church. The clergy is in many ways dying. Even the orders of religious women are dying. The average age of a religious nun in Roman Catholicism in the United States is 65. 65. When I was a young girl, I went into the convent. The day I entered the convent, 65 women entered with me the same day. Today, the community that I was in, if one woman enters a year, they are very happy, very happy. So what is going to happen as these relationships change, and in numbers as well as in terms of our principles? Those are some of the questions that are being raised around ordination. Other questions and other issues that are being dealt with are access to education, access to publishing, access to speaking, access to being heard. All of these questions around, again, the basic question of the ability to have one's gifts and one's talents recognized, used. This is not about power, although there are certainly power dimensions to religion. But this is really about the ability to give one's gift to the community, and the notion that the gifts of women are as valuable, perhaps in some cases different, but as valuable as the gifts that men have to give. Women are talking about whether or not, for some people, to go to a woman for counseling, whether they are a man or a woman, is more valuable to them. Yet this opportunity may not be there. The experience of women, the experience of women is different from the experience of men. That experience is half of the experience of the world. And in that sense, we are losing half of the experience, half of the talent, half of the gifts, if we do not fully include women in both their opportunities for education and thus their opportunities to teach and their opportunities to give. The other area that women are working on across lines is the role that, and just to go back to the question of access to education, I mean, we are now seeing this particularly if we look at what is going on in Afghanistan, where on the basis of misinterpretations of Islam, girls, the schools for girls have been totally and completely closed. These are public schools. If you are a girl in Afghanistan today, you will not get any kind of education whatsoever because of a belief, a false belief and false understanding of Islam that leads to this notion that women do not need to be educated. The final area is this area of public policy, that many religious institutions have state power. We heard about some of this today in terms of the fear that some women have to come forward. They cannot come forward because they are afraid of whether they can even enter their country, of whether or not how they will be treated as a result of speaking out. And this fundamentalism in India is a very important issue, and the fact that women are subject to the tightest controls under all of these forms of fundamentalism. Questions of divorce, remarriage, custody of children, the right to travel without the permission of your husband, all of these things are subject to state law, depending upon the power of religious institutions. So these are some of the issues that I see people working on, and where I think if we had more opportunity to talk with each other as Buddhists, as Christians, as Jews, as Hindus, etc., that we would all learn from each other. The final thing I'd like to remark on is really what I think happens whether you work together in Sakadita and see the different strategies and tactics that women are using, or whether you work across faith lines. And that is the sense that none of us really knows what will work to make change. And that I think you develop, over the time of working together, a profound respect for different strategies that people employ in different situations. In some situations, confrontation is appropriate. In some situations, confrontation will not work. In some situations, accentuating the positive, rediscovering in the scriptures, in the texts, in the canons, that which lifts up women is the best thing to do. In some situations, pointing out what is negative, the dark side of the texts and of the faith, is what brings people forward. And only when we are open to all of these different aspects and all of these different approaches, I think, can we discover ways in which we can improve women's situation within all religious bodies. And I would close with a hope. I would hope that at the next Sakadita meeting, and at every meeting that I have an opportunity to go to, that we find that we have the time to explore together in accordance with our traditions, and that we have a greater opportunity for exchange among different traditions. And thank you again very, very much.
And I think she sort of realized she had 20 minutes to prepare for the presentation today.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Everything else is commentary. Everything else is commentary. In my tradition, we are told that you should be prepared to bow with your last breath, with your whole being. And that is your relation to the universe. So I'm working on it. As Nirmala mentioned, this is not a formally prepared presentation. So I would like to speak a few minutes because I've been involved in interreligious activity for a very long time about one thing that I am learning more and more. And before that, I'd like to say that I'm very grateful not only for the opportunity to be here, but specifically for the opportunity to speak after Francis, because everything that I have to say has already been made clear. I was raised in a Jewish family. I've worked in Muslim communities for over 7 years. I've had a very long, complex, involved relationship with Christianity. And my home community in America is very much in the middle of Christian Buddhist activities. I've very often been places where I am the only Buddhist or where I'm the only Mahayana Buddhist. So that when I look for spiritual community, I need to find that inside a wider context than what necessarily calls itself Buddhism. That makes me especially grateful to be here in a conference of so many kinds of Buddhist women. All right? But there's a very simple thing that I'd like to say today. And that's that the longer that I live with this practice, the longer I live with the needs of the oppressed and the needs of the suffering and the needs of the poor, the more convinced I become that as different as religions are, in the end, it may matter less what religion you profess than where you find yourself in that religion. And I'm not now talking about lay or ordained or we're in a hierarchy. I'm talking about the way in which liberation theology and engaged Buddhism and grassroots Protestant practice and radical Judaism have very, very strong resemblances to each other. And the way in which, if you list fundamentalist practices without theology, like the exclusion of women from formal religious life, the restriction of women's education, the restriction of women's productive activities, you find it very hard to decide which religion you're talking about. I'm talking about where you are on where we are within the spectrum that all of the major religions present, which is a spectrum which has hierarchy and sexism and oppression and materialism and greed at the one end, and pledges, often imperfectly kept, to the poor, promises of egalitarianism with their attendant complications and failures, and genuine struggle to be on the side of the suffering wherever they are. Those of us who work with the poor often find ourselves less concerned with purity of doctrine and more concerned with purity of practice. Those who are scholarly in their traditions know much more about these things than we do. Okay. So what I really want to say right now, because as women, we begin at the margins in our tradition, no matter how long we've been in the tradition, no matter what our founders did. If we look at the practice of the Buddha, if we look at the practice of Christ, we see radical commitment on behalf of the marginalized. With Buddha, this was very clear in the way that he fundamentally undercut the caste system and respected women totally as enlightened beings and teachers. Yeah. The New Testament is filled with examples from Christ of this same respect, this same love, this same concern. So what I celebrate today, what I would like to say about interfaith work today, is that interfaith work takes place at all levels, and it takes place by women at all levels. Some of the most spirited defenses of fundamentalism and its treatment of women I have ever heard, I have heard from Jewish women and from Muslim women. We are not automatically any place within our tradition. And I see it, as I see it at this point, part of our struggle to realize ourselves as religious women, to realize ourselves within our traditions as religious women, and to pass those realizations on to our daughters and implicitly to our sons in a way that helps to liberate all beings. Has to come from our own processes, not only of understanding ourselves, but of understanding specifically where we are in the world, and for finding within that the possibilities and potentialities for liberating change. And our allies in this will come from everywhere. And one of the reasons I'm so grateful to be sitting next to Frances is because I don't have to tell anybody that after what she just said. Thank you very much.
Satyajita member from Ladakh. There are 4 people from Ladakh here, 2 are Satyajita members. And she too did not have very long to prepare. I think she knew just this morning perhaps that she was going to make a presentation and to be on interfaith marriages. Over to you.
Venerable Bhikshunis, respected delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege for me to speak and share my feelings with you. I am coming from Ladakh, which is the most remotest place of India. It's at the border of China and Pakistan. And my purpose of coming to this conference is to share my feelings and to learn something from all of you. And I am very happy that I am given such a great chance. And I am very thankful for Sakyadita International and especially Venerable Lekshet Somo to give us such a great chance. Ladakh is actually a Buddhist place where most of the population, they believe in Buddhism. Next, we have the Muslim, and next Christianity, and we also have some Hindus which are not originally Ladakhi. They are coming from other parts of India to make some business, or they are some government officials who are working there. Our origin is Buddhism, but Muslim came during the trade between Kazakhstan and Kashmir, probably Kashmir, which are our neighbors. And some traders who just married some Ladakhi women, and they became, after they started living in Ladakh, they became Muslims. Next, Christianity came during the time of British rule. And then Hinduism, we don't have any local Hindu there. But as I told you, some girls, they marry some Hindus also when they fall in love with some other coming from other parts of India to make business or something. The problem, we don't have much problem in this sort of things, but we never think this interfaith marriages very seriously up to this time. But now we must think over it and do something to stop all this kind of things, because we are born in any religion, you know. We are happy only in the same religion. Yes. Sorry, I am very bad in my language. Please bear with me. So, these marriages take place because of illiteracy among the Buddhist women and educational setups, some lack of understanding in religion, financial problems, social status, population. That means women are more in population to men in Ladakh. And attraction toward their city life. Most of the Ladakhi women, not the Buddhist families, they reside in villages, and their life is very hard. And if they don't find any Buddhist men to marry, they just marry some other religion. And mostly the interfaith marriages take place between Muslims and Buddhists. Buddhism in Ladakh means traditional Buddhism. We don't understand the real Buddhism there, because I have told you that it's just because of illiteracy. If we go to a monk and ask, for example, I ask some monk to explain something about religion, and sometimes they just make an excuse. They say that it's not your business, you please do your own job, you know. And it's like that. And I think that if people become more educated, more, then they will understand religion, what is Buddhism. And I hope that we won't have such kind of problems in future. Education in Ladakh means to get some degree, like you have passed your bachelor's degree, or to get complete your 10th standard, to get some living, some job, some government job, because government jobs are considered as most secure thing to do. So we are very much involved ourselves in that thing, just for our struggle for living, that we don't have much time to study Buddhism or something. Religion to us is very tradition. We call these monks for our traditional things, like at the time of birth, at the time of any ceremony, at the time of marriage, at the time of death. We just call all the monks, sometimes 40, sometimes 50. We feed them. We pay some money to them at the end of the day. For whole the day, they make some puja, and that's all for us. That's religion for us. Because we don't understand what is Buddhism. That's why the girls who cannot understand Buddhism, for them it's marrying to a Muslim or marrying to a Buddhist is one and the same thing. And if they find some suitable man, they just marry them. And if I want to do some social work in this field or somebody else, but we don't have much inspiration to do, how to start with it. Maybe we can do, but I told you, because we are already very busy bringing up children and looking after parents. In Ladakh, we have to look after our parents, in-laws or your own parents. So many responsibilities are there, so one cannot do such a social job for them. And we don't have such organization till now doing such kind of things. Any women welfare job. We have only one that is run by a British woman, Helena Norsbach. That's ecology, Ladakh ecology. And now she has other part of it just for women. That's called Women Alliances. And she has started it just this year only. No, I don't have much to say. Thank you. And if you have any suggestion how to stop and how to, please tell me. We will try to follow your suggestions in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your discussion on Indian marriage. I think we should open the floor to questions. Are there any questions on any of the issues which were being discussed today? Any questions from any of the speakers? Some very thought-provoking ideas here.
This. Wait. Nirmala, also this.
her name? Ladakh. Mora. Mrs. or Dr. I would like to ask Mrs. Mora from Ladakh. As you say about your religion, it's just to have monks in your occasions. That's all for your religion. It's nothing to, you don't know about much religion, your people. After the conference, Shakadita conference in Ladakh, is there any changes?
Of course, there are many changes. We have, the Sakyadita of Ladakh have started a project now because we thought about literacy. It's concerning literacy of women in Ladakh. Only we can, all our problems can be solved when our women will be literate. So, and so many other things we have done. Especially some nunneries are come up after Sakyadita Sakyadita conference. And the nunneries are not run by Sakyadita but other organization. But still we have some, as compared to the past years, we have some facilities. Some girls who are frustrated and some girls who don't have any, don't have financial aids to go for further studies, they also become nuns there. It's very strange in Ladakh till now that to become a nun is not a decision of the girls, but their parents decide that who will become a nun and who will become a monk from a family. Mostly all the families, they have one nun or one monk from their family. I have my sister, younger sister, she is also a nun. And now she is living in a nunnery. Before the Sakyadita conference, she used to stay with our family.
Professor Sham referred to the Buddhist attitude of tolerance towards faith, towards other faiths. But this tolerance, I am afraid to say, has been to the disadvantage of the Buddhists or Buddhism today to a very large degree. I like to ask all these, our friends, whether we counter this while remaining tolerant, as we had been doing, as it had been our tradition. Should we be tolerating the kind of disadvantages that we have to suffer today? Here I am referring to mostly the Christianization or conversions. Unethical conversions go on in Sri Lanka. I am sure it happens in other countries like Thailand, I don't know, Burma, and Taiwan, China to a large degree, I know. And so what do you say to that? Do we tolerate that because we are traditionally tolerant, or should we counter that without being intolerant, I think? Yes, unethical conversion, I should explain. Here, unethical, I mean usually making use of a person's poverty. Mostly the countries that I refer to are third world countries, developing countries. There's a large sector of poor people. Bulk of the people are poor in those countries. And nowadays, there are lots of people who come from the West, from America and the West, from Switzerland, Norway, and various countries, they can give material things to these poor people and convert them. That is what we call unethical conversion, converting people by making use of their poverty, by giving material things without